All right. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be interviewing Franz Schroer, and we're thrilled to be here with him today. He's joining us from Germany. So, hi, Franz. Thank you for being here.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So, a little bit about Franz. He is a research assistant and a PhD at the Center for Teaching and Learning Technology and Science. Um, and this is with primary and special needs education at Paderborn University in Germany. Before his doctoral studies, he studied bachelor and master's educational studies for the teaching at primary schools with the subjects mathematics, basic German language, literature, natural and social sciences at the University of Münster. His current research is concerned with science and technology related teaching and learning, as well as inclusion and the nature of consideration of pupils' needs in interdisciplinary science and technology studies at the primary level. So, this is really relevant to what we're doing in school as well. We're all technology education teachers, so it was really awesome to read your article. So, we just have a few questions for you. So, to start off, can you share any pivotal experiences or academic endeavors that have ignited your passion for the subject of inclusion and significantly shaped the content of your work in this chapter?
That's a great question. I loved it. And I have to start maybe quite a bit before my bachelor and master studies, because before I studied bachelor and master for primary education in Germany, I worked in community service. So community service is what you were supposed to do at the time as a replacement for military service in Germany. And I worked in community service at a special needs education school. So in Germany, there's separated schools for special needs education still today. And I worked at a school for physical and movement disabled students, and worked always worked with a single student at at the time, and it was done after about 12 months. And after 12 months, I applied for bachelor studies for special needs education, but it was rejected. So I worked for another year at the special needs school. I just worked at the previous 12 months and worked with a kid of I think he was 6 years old at the time, and was diagnosed for having early childhood autism. And the interesting thing about this, what still kind of bothers me today, is he was from a village close to the city where I lived in, not too close. He was about 40 40 kilometers. I don't know. Do you measure in miles or in kilometers?
We measure in kilometers here.
In kilometers.
Yeah.
So everyone will be just fine. So his village was about 30 to 40 kilometers away from the school, and he had a very long way to school every morning. And what happened through this was, he didn't have many social contacts in the school because all the kids there came from different places around the city, and he didn't have too many social contacts at home as well because all the other kids went together to school and he didn't went to school with them. And that's kind of what I thought about a lot in the recent years. Um, why our school system in Germany works that way? Because of course, special needs education schools can deliver a lot. Regular schools cannot deliver, um, but also it forms a very strong social exclusion I just mentioned to the children. So that might be some kind of a pivotal experience I can share that makes sense why I'm still dealing with inclusion. Another one might be my master's, the thesis I wrote for my master's degree. I got my master's degree for a thesis on pupils' needs in mathematics education at primary level, and it was a lot about my thesis was a lot about girls and boys' wishes about mathematics education, and I realized that it's not so much about gender in that place anyway. So there were very many similar wishes to boys and girls, and they differentiate not too much along gender anyway. So after the after writing my thesis, I thought about, well, just it would have been more interesting if you left gender aside as a category. Maybe that makes sense.
Hmm. No, wow, that's really great. So it was really a firsthand experience for you that got you interested in the subject. And I feel like oftentimes that's what it takes to really see how this sort of thing can affect a person.
Yeah, I think so. So it might as well be. There's a lot of people. We have to say that there's a lot of people that just just get a career option as a PhD, and I don't want to make that small in any kind of way, but so it was kind of intrinsic for me. So I tried to apply for a PhD before the opening for my workplace now was there. So it was kind of I felt the need to not become a teacher now or at the time, um, but do that maybe later on. We'll see. I'm still at uni at the moment. See if I will become a teacher at any time in my life. I don't know.
Well, yeah, your research is definitely very valuable to people who are teachers. So, yeah, that's really great. Um, so, moving on to the second question that we have for you. In light of the ongoing challenges in curriculum development and the inclusive turn in education, what future developments or changes would you like to see in German primary schools? Are there any specific practical models or strategies that you think could be implemented?
The first thing I want to state is I see and a lot of researchers and I suppose also the UN see inclusion as an ever ongoing process, so not as something we might want to reach at some that someday we're going to stand here and say inclusion, we're done with that, we're going to do something else now because inclusion is finished. So I think the thought process of um, getting equal participation in education for all children is ever ongoing because there's always going to be marginalized groups in education, whether this is about ability and disability, whether this is about giftedness, whether this is about race or gender or migration status or socioeconomic status. So I think there's always going to be kind of a bit of marginalization in the educational system, and inclusion asks us to think about this all the time, to keep in mind that we want to have an equal educational system that everyone can participate on, because that's to me that is the only way to get a society everyone can participate in, and we can put this over to technology and or technology education and think about, well, we want everyone to participate in technology in some kind of way. So we want if uh, take the example maybe of cars. So everyone's buying a car and we want people to make a reasonable decision about whether they're gonna buy an electric or a hybrid car or a diesel car or whatever, and therefore they have to be educated in some kind of way, because you're not gonna learn about how a car is working on your own. Also, mm, I wanted to share some more thoughts, because you asked more in a more direct way to what's the practical things we have to keep in mind. And that's, to me, that was kind of a difficult part of the question, because technology education in international contexts is implemented differently across the globe everywhere. So the school subject I'm teaching in Sachunterricht integrate integrates a lot of different school subjects that are separated in other school system or in other educational systems. So in Canada, for example, you in primary ed you have a school subject science and technology, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
So science and technology are integrated together in one school subject. That's what we do as well, but we integrate it with others as well. In the Netherlands, for example, a neighbor country of Germany, there's a school subject design and technology. So technology is kind of divided from science, which makes sense as well, but it's just a different subdivision. So it's mm, what one has to keep in mind is always that technology is kind of a complex thing to learn about, because you have always technology is always happening kind of in between science and design, or science and kind of the human side of technology. So if you take, for example, the example of a doorknob or so, if you would ask a scientist how to design a doorknob properly, you would make it kind of very long, because you might not need a lot of strength to open the door then. But the human side of technology says, well, we still want to reach the doorknob when you push it down, so it makes sense to don't make it too long. And that's how the human and the scientific side of technology kind of interacted. It doesn't really make sense to separate them from one another. And you can apply this to many other disciplines. So if you think about technology from a historical standpoint, a lot of technological devices, artifacts, processes are are historically have become the way they are through historical development. So, for example, the way we design a newspaper so is historically developed. Um, and then I want to come back to inclusion. And what's for me the most important thing about inclusion is that we take serious the state of the UNESCO from 2008, where they state all means all. So inclusion, so that inclusive education is not about students with disabilities visiting a regular school, or girls and boys visiting a school together, or students with migration status and regular students with visiting a school together. But it's about all students. It's about reducing barriers in education for all students. That means to me that we minimize ontologic conclusions about the children we teach. So if we know something about a kid, maybe the kid has a low socioeconomic status, it's easy to make some kind of pigeonholing with the children and say, well, if the kid has a low socioeconomic status or a certain disability or so, we think that he might not be too interested in technology education. And that might be correct for some of the students, but it's never correct for all of them. And we as teachers are incorrect at the time where we take a single student out and say, you have this and that personal variable, you might be not interested in technology. And that's kind of the danger we are under if we use ontologic conclusions about the students we teach. And what we really have to do, and I'm not sure how much, so this is different in very many countries, but in Germany we have a great problem with the connection of special needs diagnosis and the allocation of funds and personnel. So if you have a child with diagnosed special needs in your class, you might get funding or personnel for your class, and that forms some kind of a dilemma. So on the one hand, you can label the child as a special needs kid, and then you get funding and personnel, and if you don't, you might have more of an inclusive class, because having the label of a special needs child is kind of a burden, one might think. So it's not too easy to be the one special needs child in the class. And then I thought about, well, I read through the article again, and I thought about the curriculum dilemma again I mentioned there. So do we need one curriculum for all children, or do we need 30 different curricula for 30 children? But then we have a problem with our inclusion, because we wanna have them all participate in the same curriculum. And I don't want to say we have to solve this dilemma in some kind of way, because it wouldn't be a dilemma if it wasn't hard to solve. But we kind of could better address it, I think, because at least in Germany we have a binding curriculum with regular standards that everyone should achieve, doesn't have to achieve. It's good that we don't have minimum standards, because if you have a binding curriculum, that's kind of the worst combination. If you have a binding curriculum with minimum standards, um, you have a problem with the kids that might not reach the minimum standards. What do you can't kick them out of school
Right.
in any kind of way. So that's what we have to think about. So how can we differentiate among the curriculum? And there's some curricula that do that in a decent way, but I think we're going to come to that in a second.
Yeah, I think that was that's really valuable insight into like inclusivity in the technology classroom, because obviously there's standards, but a lot of time it's going to take thinking on your feet for some of the students to be able to reach those standards. So there's
Mm.
definitely not one model that could fit everybody who has
No,
different
no,
needs.
not at all.
Right.
I, yeah, yeah. There
Yeah.
might be some. There might be some. Well, things about teaching and learning that come to mind where you say that could be valuable for technology teaching. Kind of like things like that, but that's most of the time the things that have always been valuable. So so hands-on and minds-on activities,
Right.
so that you not only start to create, but also think about what you create and how you create it and why you create it the way you do.
Right. Yeah. All important considerations in any classroom, really. So, I have another question for you as well. Um, how can technology education programs better prepare educators to implement curriculum pedagogical approaches in technology education, especially considering diverse classroom settings that may encounter?
Okay, I'm going to try, because I talked a lot in the last question. I'm going to try to make this one a bit shorter.
Yeah, it's
So
okay. We appreciate
I,
it.
I want to I want to talk about. I want to address 3 points. The first one is, I think we have to create, or we as teacher educators have to teach inclusive attitudes and values. So I said a second ago, it is easy to pigeonhole pupils, to put them in a column and say you are that way, you are that way, and I think we have to teach people to open up their mind, or to help them open up their mind, because it's so easy it's so easy to make yourself a picture about a picture about a pupil. The second thing is, to me, that sounds crucial, but make it difficult. So inclusive education, especially at primary level, is not easy. So I don't want to say so, and that's why I didn't mention a model in the question before, a certain model you can do it with, and then you're going to be just fine. No, it's difficult, because you have a lot of different children, you have a lot of different situations you're going to be confronted with that are not going to be too easy. And I think we have to value this and have to let students see that teacher educators are not making this easy as well. So if we talk about this is all too easy, teachers might come to school later and say, well, I'm going to do inclusive education the easy way. And I think there is no easy way to it. You have to think a lot about, how can I adapt my tasks to the learning group? How can I form rich tasks, problematic tasks, but that are able to differentiate from different, are able to integrate different standpoints or different preconceptions of children, so everyone can address a task in an active or an iconic or a symbolic way, or whatever. And then I think inclusive teaching, or making teachers, or help teachers to become better teachers for inclusive education, is a lot about multi-professional learning. So learning with different professions that they are going to meet in the school later. So there's teachers on the one hand, but there might be teaching assistants as well. There might be special needs teachers. There might be technologists that are caring for digital technologies at the school, and all the people are around the school. And as teachers, as a teacher, you might become some kind of a manager someday. I hope so. So some kind of a school class manager. There's part of the things teachers do might be teaching in the class, but a lot about it is also coordinating all the people around the class, so that teaching assistants, that technology managers, and all the people around it do the right thing as well. And that's a complex thing that I think we haven't thought about enough by now. And that's the 3 points, I guess.
Right. Well, yeah, we talk a lot about collaboration in our program, so it's nice to hear the emphasis on like how important that actually is. So,
Mm.
for the next question, I wanted to ask. So the article discusses the needs to reconsider topics, content, and learning objectives in the context of inclusive education. How can educators maybe find that balance that's needed between existing curriculum requirements and incorporating technology-related questions and phenomena that emerge from student inquiries?
They can't. It's hard, but in a lot of countries across the globe, we have binding curricula that are basically packed. So they are full of stuff you have to do in your curriculum when you're a teacher. Um, the thing you can do, and that's the but about it, and it's kind of, I think I thought about if it was a big or a small but I think it's a big one. So, but um, most of the curriculums internationally are uh, use literacy as a basic term. So they are not too much driven by the content. So you might have several skills or knowledge that the pupils have to learn or that are binded in the curriculum, but you can choose the content you do it with. So if you think about programming skills, you can you can teach pupils programming skills by using a learning robot, and you can teach pupils programming skills by using a microcontroller. And that makes a difference. And the difference in it is that you as a teacher, you kind of have to dare to do it, because we are going to be confronted with new content and new methods and new media all the time. So school and lessons, they do change over time. We don't, I think we kind of don't realize it, because from the time we leave school ourselves, we think it stays all the time the same. But I asked my students a few weeks ago about how many of them visited a computer room during primary school education. I never did so, but all of them did. So that was kind of that they see there's a difference about maybe to 10 to 12 years, but a lot has changed. So every single one of them has been to a computer room in primary school education. That's kind of a big development. Um, and sometimes I think as a teacher, you have to be courageous and curious about the children's ideas and questions. So there might be not a lot of space in the curriculum to integrate them, but the the great thing is the things you do in class and the things you do about the children's questions and ideas can be connected to the curriculum afterwards as well. So it doesn't always have to be the previous plan to address the curriculum in this certain way, but maybe even sometimes you cannot do this all the time, but maybe sometimes you can give the pupils the opportunity to choose what they want to learn about astronomy or about robots. What do you want to know about it? And they can choose themselves, but therefore you have to give them a real choice. And that's the hard thing, because there might be things coming out you didn't intend or you didn't think about, or you don't know anything about. And that's kind of the thing where you have to be courageous, because you have to be courageous to say, I don't know. I don't know yet, but we're going to find out.
Right. Yeah, so almost like a student could ask a question, and if you don't have the answer in that moment, maybe when you get there in the curriculum, you can sort of keep that in your mind and remind them that this relates to what they were wondering earlier in the semester. And I feel like what you said really points to the importance of like the optional components within the technology curricula when it comes to like projects and everything, so they can revisit what their interests are. Right.
Yeah, that would be great. If we could do that, that would be so great. But our curricula are made for project-oriented learning too much. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of a sad thing. But
Yeah,
it's hard to design a project-oriented curriculum, on the other hand, because, well, curricula are always integrated into a school system, and it's hard to change it from bottom to top. But it's the same way the other way around, from top to bottom. It's difficult to change as well because it's so big of a thing, a school system. It's hard to change it, and I kind of in some way I get how it's difficult in many countries to change educational systems, to change curricula, because everything depends on one another.
Right.
So if you change the curriculum, you have to change teacher ed. If you change the school system, you have to change the lessons and all that stuff.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It is, yeah, it's complex, but I understand what you're saying. So I think we have time for one more of my questions before we move on to opening it up to the audience. So,
okay.
Yeah, so another thing I was wondering was, so the article suggests that international perspectives on inclusive technology education can provide valuable insights for both educators and policymakers in Germany. Throughout your research, whether for this piece or another, have you come across any curriculums or pedagogical examples in an international context that are a good model for inclusive education?
That was really a hard one, because I started it's kind of not too easy to differentiate, because if you look for a curriculum in a foreign language other than English, because my English is, well, it works for an interview, so it works for finding the right curriculum for Newfoundland, for example. And I looked at the Newfoundland technology education curriculum. I don't know if it was the correct one, but it said kind of inclusive education was kind of one of the first chapters, and I thought, well, that's great. And then I read the inclusive education chapter, and it said special needs education, I think not even one time in it, and it was great. It was great reading it. But what I thought about a lot was it was subdivided in a long catalog of different competencies to reach, of different skills to teach. And that's where I thought, well, that might be hard if you understand inclusion in such a broad manner. And that's where it becomes difficult to do curriculum analysis, because I said a second ago, these curricula, they are always integrated into a school system. You might I looked at the curriculum of Turkey, of the country of Turkey, the other day, and I thought about, well, they might have a great curriculum. It works perfect, but you have to take a look at the school system on the other hand. So you have to keep in mind what kind of school system is behind this. If I wasn't from Germany and I would look at the curriculum for Sachunterricht, so for interdisciplinary science, social and technology studies at primary level, I think I would say, what a great subject. How much sense does it make to take an artifact or a phenomenon or a process or a problem from the children's living environment and look at it from different perspectives. So that makes so much sense to me, because pupils, especially primary education pupils, they are not thinking in domain categories such as this might be physics education, this might be chemistry, this might be biology. They see the phenomenon and they interpret it in the way they are thinking. They are not thinking in scientific domains. They are not thinking this must be design and technology, or this must be chemistry education. And therefore, it makes sense to begin teaching and learning from the thought process of the children. And that's what makes sense about the school subject, Sachunterricht, interdisciplinary science and social studies at primary level. But on the other hand, the school subject in Germany, the school system in Germany, especially at primary level, doesn't make that much sense in in a way. So when primary schools in Germany they were invented in the early 1900s, and there in this very old document about the founding of primary schools, it said that primary schools would be a school for all the children. But still today, more than 100 years after it, we have separate schools for special needs education for some children. And that just and therefore you can have a great curriculum, but if you have a special needs school on the other hand, where the curriculums are shortened, they are delayed, you're missing the point of inclusion in by any means, basically.
I agree. I read that in the article that a lot of parents choose to put their like special needs children in these different schools, and I've had the same thought. It completely contradicts inclusion. So
Yeah, and we can put it to the parents. So we can say that's the parents' fault,
yeah,
but the system works at the moment. The system works in that way that the parents are to choose, and
right.
they don't. I don't know whether they make the right decision or the wrong decision. They try to make a good decision for their kid. That's what we would
Of
assume.
course, yeah.
But um, if it's the right decision, that's a so hard question to answer, and it I think it would be better for a lot of the children to visit the same school with the others from their um, social surroundings, I would say.
Yeah. Sorry, you're lagging a little bit. So it looked like you were still talking, but
Oh,
I
I'm
got you.
sorry. Oh, I hope I.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna throw it over to the audience now, and I'm gonna read out one of the questions that one of my classmates has asked. So he says,
Hmm.
from Shay, he says, in your chapter, you discuss work-in as being a separate subject that focuses on crafting or the concept of technology as a process. Does technology education in Germany explore all of the other concepts discussed in De Vries, such as artifacts, volition, knowledge, or does it emphasize one over the other? I'm also happy to repeat that if you'd like me to.
No, it's all good. I got the question.
Okay.
I got to think about it for a second and then answer very slowly to sort out my thoughts during answering.
Yeah, of course.
So I I think I wrote a bit about it in the article. So about what content is in German curricula. So it's about the stability of objects, for example, which is a lot about learning about artifacts, kind of. What we what is often in German classrooms is as well, if you think about technology as a process, maybe as like individual and serial producing of several of technological artifacts. So we do that. I don't have it around me. Usually it's here on my desk. It's very often that you build a small locomotive made out of wood, or it's kind of a beloved, also a beloved project for shortly before Christmas, that you produce Christmas stars made out of paper, and once you produce them, every child for themselves, they make their very own star. The great quality. It looks just perfect. They do it. It's so long that it's just they can take it home as a present. And in the second step, you move on and you do this in a serial production. So every kid does one folding, and you get in a very brief, short period of time, you get 50, 100, whatever many Christmas stars from the kids are made out of paper. But the quality for those is very much different from the ones they did for themselves. And there you can talk about technology as a process. So how does individual production and serial production work? So that might be about technology as a process. And then I'm thinking about maybe technology as a problem. So I read a lot about problem solving in the now founded curriculum as well. So technological problem solving is kind of the fundamental method to technology education for me. So when we think a lot about learning with or teaching with robots and programming at the moment, and it's always about designing tasks that where the pupils are asked to solve a problem, not to find the way from one place to another with a driving robot, but for example, to um, if you choose a map, if you take a map for it, you might think of the robot as a vacuum and mopping robot, and he has to cover all the fields on the map in the shortest way possible or so. So that's a task you can't solve just easily from one moment to another. You have to think about this, and that's what problem solving is all about. You can optimize it and all that thing. I hope that answers the question. It's a pity
Yeah.
that I can't see the others.
No, I think that was great. And it's really interesting that you bring up like the robot building because our class right now is actually in the process of building our own robots and it started with, you know, the problem scenario and it's exactly the whole process was exactly how you just explained it. So, yeah, that's really cool. Well, that's all the time we have for today, Franz, but we want to thank you so much for joining us for this and sharing your very valuable insights on all the questions that we were wondering. So thank you on behalf of myself and my class.
Thank you so much for having me and for asking about it. I think I'm going to do a project like this in Germany as well.
Good, yeah.
So this is a great idea. I love it. I love the project to interview researchers.
Yeah. It also,
So thank you very much for having me.
no problem. Yeah, it was a very important topic. So I'm glad we were able to discuss it. Okay. See you later.